Hello there. Welcome to Just the Dis. We talk about Blu-rays here, and today, among other things, we're going to talk about Peter Bogdanovich and his first flop. He had a great run in the early 1970s when he really took off. And, he did Last Picture Show, which was a critical and commercial success, really put him on the map and has connections to the movie I'm going to talk about in a second. And then he did What's Up, Doc?, his throwback to the screwball comedies of the 30s and 40s, Bringing Up Baby being a pretty big influence on it, obviously, if you watch it. And that was also I believe critical, but definitely commercial success. And then he did Paper Moon. So that's 71, 72, 73. One a year, which is a pretty great run of great films. And Paper Moon was definitely a critical and commercial success as well. Garnered an Oscar for Tatum O'Neal. Great performances from Ryan and his daughter. And just, three really great movies. So what does he do for his follow-up? Well, since 1971, when he did Last Picture Show and when he met one Sybil Shepherd, they had been, enamored of each other. He ended up leaving his wife at the time. It was complicated in his personal life, and he was still quite enamored of her circa 1973, 1974, and they were looking for a new project to work together on. And he came across the Henry James novella, Daisy Miller. As a result, we have Daisy Miller on Blu-ray. But he was at first thinking that he would obviously cast Sybil as Daisy Miller, this American expatriate from Schenectady, I think she keeps saying, who's abroad in Europe in the, late 1800s, I guess? Does it say? 1878. And that he himself would play Frederick Winterbourne, who is sort of the main character of the story, the guy who we see Daisy Miller through, and had initially pitched it sort of to Orson Welles and said, hey, what do you think of this? I was thinking about playing Winterbourne, and she'd play Daisy Miller. Would you direct? And he said he liked, the book, but he said he wouldn't direct it. He said, you should direct it. So Peter backed out of the idea of casting himself, and they were able, between Sybil and Peter, were able to find actor Barry Brown, who is just so stunningly good in this movie. And Sybil's good too. I mean, she's in a little over her head, and it's a little above maybe what she was capable of at the time, but she really does rise to the occasion for the most part. And so they cast Barry Brown, and he is just the perfect Winterbourne. In fact, Bogdanovich said he was just like a mirror of the Winterbourne character in a lot of ways, just had a sort of a repressed nature and was a bit morose. Bogdanovich mentioned that he used to read the obituaries every day. And one of the great tragedies of this film, among the fact that it didn't do well, and it was Bogdanovich's first flop and would lead to a series of flops, including At Long Last Love, Nickelodeon, and I'm trying to think. St. Jack, I think, did okay, and then he starts to get his feet back under him with St. Jack in 79, and They All Laughed in 81. But this was a sad movie in that Barry Brown, who had really come onto the scene relatively recently prior to this film, he had some smaller acting roles in the late 60s, early 70s, I think. The most prominent of which was Robert Benton's 1972 directorial debut, Bad Company, which is a Western with he and Jeff Bridges, and they are really great together, and Barry Brown definitely stands out in that movie. Like Jeff Bridges does too. It's obviously it's Jeff Bridges. You know, he's one of my favorite actors of all time. But the two of them together are so great. You could see why Bogdanovich probably, although I didn't hear him specifically really speak of Bad Company, but I could see why a lot of people would have responded to him after seeing him in that. So this is, you know, the most prominent role Barry Brown ever gets. 4 years later, he takes his own life. He commits suicide, and he had not gotten another part like this since then, and probably the failure of this movie he took pretty hard. I haven't been able to figure out exactly why he killed himself, but I know he had been reduced to doing a lot of television, walk-on parts on Policewoman and things like that, and maybe that was not what he was aspiring to anymore. I don't know, but that just makes the movie that much more haunting in a way. And I won't go into the specifics of the ending, but each time I watch this movie, I get more and more moved by it. And I'm just curious. So this is what's neat about this. This is the Blu-ray debut of Daisy Miller, which is great. Brand new HD master from a 4K scan of a 35mm original camera negative. From cinema giant Peter Bogdanovich, and the classic novella by Henry James, who wrote Turn of the Screw, of course. Daisy Miller stars as the sensational Sybil Shepherd, as the free-spirited young American living abroad in Europe with her daffy mother and brother, bratty kid brother. A woman who does as she pleases, yet who seldom pleases anybody but herself. Daisy is very liberated and very much ahead of her time, as her behavior scandalizes the Victorian high society of 1878. With sumptuous cinematography by an Oscar-nominated costumes and a streak of delightful acerbic humor, Bogdanovich's adaptation is one of the few great films based on a great book. That's Richard Brody being quoted. Co-starring Bogdanovich favorites Barry Brown, who was also in the Great Northfield, Minnesota raid, so he had a bit of a run on some Westerns. Mildred Natwick, Eileen Brennan, and Cloris Leachman. And this movie looks really wonderful, and it was shot on location in Rome, and there's a great hotel that I think James is talking about in the novella. He either wrote it there or he's referring to it in the novella. I can't remember which, but it has a view, this sort of terrace view of the Alps. And one of the things Peter talks about in the features is how difficult it was to get a shot of that because there was a lot of fog and things like that, and they had to wait. But anyway, it's beautifully shot. It's well acted. It starts a little shaky because when Barry Brown first encounters the little brother, who is played by the son of Larry McMurtry, which I think is fascinating. And he's kind of a homey-looking kid, and he's got a real hard, "What you doing there?" kind of voice that's pretty obnoxious, and he's obnoxious. The character is supposed to be obnoxious, and he sort of immediately kind of starts talking to Barry Brown's character, Mr. Frederick Winterbourne, and asking him for sugar, and he's talking very fast and not listening to... It's sort of that overlapping dialogue, but it doesn't feel like it's quite working yet, and you're kind of like, oh, I don't know about this. And then he meets Daisy Miller, Sybil Shepherd, and she's also doing the chatterbox, talking a mile a minute, not really listening, not really giving him time to respond. Tarantino, in his book Cinema Speculation, has a chapter on Daisy Miller, which is great. And he talks about all the movie brats who would later on do adaptations of period novels and things like that, and how Bogdanovich was one of the first to do it. And he obviously has a great admiration for this film and for Barry Brown. And he makes a great sort of metaphorical comparison between Barry Brown and the character of Daisy Miller at the end of this film, which I won't go into, but definitely read that chapter. But one of the things he mentions is that Bogdanovich is obviously trying to do, yet again, this sort of Howard Hawksian, rapid-fire, fast-paced dialogue like he did in What's Up, Doc, and he does in Paper Moon to a degree as well. And it's not necessarily perfectly suited for Sybil Shepherd to do. And she's good at it, and she finds her way. And obviously, years later when she's in Moonlighting, like, she's shows that she has an incredible aptitude for that kind of dialogue. Even in Taxi Driver, she does. But at the beginning of this, you kind of feel like she's in over her head, and she's having to do long dialogue scenes without a break, and that's very difficult for an actor, especially when you're trying to find a rhythm and not and allow the other actor to respond to a little bit, but not cut them off. Anyway, so it starts off a little shaky, but she really grows into the part and the character. Just this very, irreverent American girl who doesn't understand that, especially the American expatriates in Rome at the time are very snooty about how women behave. Eileen Brennan plays one of the women. Mildred Natwick is the aunt of Barry Brown, and she's almost immediately condemning Daisy Miller. And Daisy Miller is part of the rumors surrounding her and her character are something that is really occupies this society in a lot of ways, and it's kind of pathetic, sort of, if you think about it. But Mildred Natwick, a very interesting actor who apparently Bogdanovich cast without having even met, because he knew her from the great John Ford films, and she said she was wonderful, and she's great as this aunt character. She immediately, perfectly fits that kind of role, if you will. And so once Frederick Winterborn becomes smitten with the Daisy Miller character, he finds himself under fire or having to defend her from just about everybody in this Roman expatriate society. So Eileen Brennan plays a woman, a high society woman, who really takes issue with Daisy Miller's behavior. She goes out with this Italian man and is seen in public with him without a chaperone. And at one point, she is seen with two men, Barry Brown's Winterborn character and this Italian man. And there's a great moment where she calls Barry Brown's character over. She says, "Can you get her to come over here and get in my carriage? Because, she's really embarrassing herself, and it's just becoming incredibly awkward." So Barry Brown tries to get her to do that, and Daisy Miller refuses, and that becomes a real turning point for the character in a lot of ways, because she just doesn't understand what the big deal is. She's just like, "What's this? I don't understand this, and I won't, be forced to conform." And so she is a real rebellious type to her own detriment. And I won't go into the specifics of what happens to her, but it is, again, very tragic and a powerful story, and has one of the greatest ending shots of a Bogdanovich film ever, and one that I know Wes Anderson ripped off, where it's just like a leaf, almost like fires catching smoke in some trees in the background of this shot, and there's a fade to white at the end, which is super rare. But it's an incredibly moving film. The more I watch it, and the more I think about the characters, I think about Barry Brown, and I just really am happy to see it get a Blu-ray. So this one ports over some nice features that were available on the previous DVD, including an audio commentary with director and producer Bogdanovich, an introduction by Bogdanovich that's about 12 minutes long, in which I talk through a lot of the points that he brings up in that intro. There's also, I think, a new commentary by film historian and critic Peter Tungette, remembering Daisy Miller, an interview with star Sybil Shepherd. That's about 10 minutes. She's very serious in that interview. Does not have a lot of levity, which I would have always kind of associated with her, but in that, she almost seems mad when she's being interviewed. But she does have some good memories of it, and it's just unfortunate that it broke the streak that Bogdanovich was on, and he really stumbled for a while after that, and it took him some time to recover. And it wouldn't be until St. Jack, which in a way he had brought about because he obviously, casts Sybil Shepherd in Last Picture Show. She does nude scenes in that, which she was very sort of trepidatious about, but which the women in the film said, go ahead and do it. And so she did. And then, the guy who runs Playboy, Hugh Hefner, takes stills from some of those and publishes them in Playboy, and they sue. Sybil and Peter sue Playboy, or sue Hugh Hefner, and he controlled the rights to St. Jack, and they ended up bargaining for St. Jack to get the rights to it, to film it. And that becomes like one of his great movies, in my opinion. But so it's like, because of his affection for Sybil, he makes this film and it starts to make his career stumble. But also, growing out of that is this opportunity for him to recover in a way. And then he loses Dorothy Stratton around the time of They All Laughed, and never recovers really from that, unfortunately. But, who can blame him? But so anyway, this is a very pivotal film for Bogdanovich, and I still think a great and underrated film. So highly recommend checking out this Blu-ray. It looks very nice. I'm going to talk about a few other Kino discs here, and they don't really have anything to do with, Bogdanovich or the 70s. They're more aimed at like the genre audience of the 40s and 50s. And so we're going to start with this Sci-Fi Chillers collection from Kino, and this is a new collection. Some of these have been available on Blu-ray before, but I can't be sure about all of them. So I'll talk about what I can remember in terms of what's available, but this is an interesting set. So this includes 3 films. It includes The Unknown Terror from 1957, The Colossus of New York from 1958, and Destination Interspace from 1966. And all interesting, relatively lower budget, if I'm not mistaken, films. And so The Unknown Terror, I don't know too much about it. A woman leads an expedition into a remote jungle to find her long-lost brother, but instead finds a mad scientist who has created a fungus monster that feeds on the local inhabitants. Sounds a little bit like the tree horror movie From Hell It Came or something like that. It stars John Howard, Mala Powers, Paul Richards, a bunch of folks I've never heard of. Sci-fi and horror collide in 3 bone-rattling and bizarre B-movie classics. I'll go through them again. The Unknown Terror, 1957. A millionaire leads a remote jungle expedition to find the legendary Cave of the Dead, where his wife's brother had disappeared long ago. Instead, they stumble upon a mad doctor who has created a horde of foam-spewing, fungus-covered monster men. Directed by Charles Marquis Warren and shot by Joseph F. Byrock, who I think is a big collaborator of Robert Aldrich. I think he was his guy on almost everything. In spine-chingling regal scope. So I'm not sure if that one's been out before. Colossus of New York, 1958, when a brilliant scientist, Ross Martin, is accidentally killed. His preserved brain is transferred to the body of a giant robot so that it can continue to serve mankind. But when it gains awareness of its own hideousness, this steel colossus embarks on a rampage of destruction. Directed by Eugene Laurie, Gorgo, and co-starring Mala Powers, again, she's in the first movie as well, as the deceased man's horrified wife, and Otto Kruger as his obsessed bad scientist father. Now, Colossus of New York had been on Blu-ray from Olive, bare bones. I'll go through the extras here in a second, but it's got some more stuff than that didn't have. Destination Interspace is the third film, 1966. When an object of unknown origin is detected in the area of an underwater laboratory, scientists investigate and come face to face with the object, an extraterrestrial saucer. They board the craft and discover a mysterious cylinder, which they take back to the lab for closer inspection. It is then that the events take a monstrous turn. Director Francis D. Lyon and directed by Francis D. Lyon, starring Scott Brady, who's the brother of Lawrence Tierney and who looks a lot like Lawrence Tierney. Sherry North and Gary Merrill. Oh, I'm a big Gary Merrill fan. I like him a lot. Destination Interspace was shot in Eastman color by cinematographer Brick Marquard, who also shot Foxy Brown, apparently. So this set is really nice because I'll go into the extras in a second, but it's a 2-disc set. The 3 films contained on 2 discs, and it has some extras. You can see some of the monsters. So it has some commentaries that are pretty cool. Actually, I like the artwork a lot too. Audio commentary for The Unknown Terror by artist and film historian Stephen R. Bissett. Audio commentary for The Colossus of New York by film historians Tom Weaver, Larry Blameyer, and Ron Adams. Those guys are old pros, especially Tom Weaver. No not unfamiliar with classic horror of the period. Audio commentary on Destination Interspace by film historians David Del Valle and Stan Schaefer. And sidebar on The Colossus of New York, on-camera interview with Tim Lucas and Stephen R. Bissett. So Tim Lucas is involved in that. That's cool, even if he doesn't do a commentary. Sidebar on Interspace, on-camera with Tim Lucas and Stephen R. Bissett as well. So Tim Lucas involved in 2 of the 3 in on-camera interviews. So that's a really cool set, and I like when Kino puts together these sets. And we'll talk about their next one here, which is this Republic Pictures horror collection. And again, I think some of these have been on Blu-ray before. I know one for sure, as I have it over here. But this set is films from 1944 to 1946. It is 4 movies, running approximately 275 minutes total. This runs 230 minutes. These 4 acclaimed chillers from Republic Pictures are guaranteed to put a tingle down your spine and a smile on your face. The Lady and the Monster, 1944. Erich von Stroheim plays a mad scientist bent on keeping the brain of a millionaire, William Donovan, alive after he removes it from Donovan's dying body. His assistant, Richard Arlen, serves as host for Donovan's brain's impulses. The lady of the title, Vera Walston, fights against the monstrous experiment. Phantom Speaks, 1945. Now, I'm pretty sure this one is in one of the imprint films. I think they had, I don't know if it was specifically Republic, but they had like a classic horror set that I'm pretty sure that was in. And I'll get to them again in a second. The vengeful spirit of an executed murderer, Tom Powers, enters the body of a physician, Stanley Ridges, and forces him to do its bidding, namely murder. A newspaper man, Richard Arlen, again, must unravel the bloody supernatural secret before it's too late. The Catman of Paris, 1946. Now, this one did get a standalone release from imprint, which, unfortunately, I can't get rid of because I think it has a different commentary. Yes, it has a different commentary, and it has a full documentary on Republic Pictures, which is really cool. So I got to keep that, unfortunately. I would love to get rid of it now that I have this, but... So, 1946. After a mysterious cat-like creature slaughters people close to him, Parisian Charles Renier is suspected of murder. Charles fears that he is the beast, but his paramour Marie and best friend believe he's innocent until the Catman begins to stalk Marie. So yeah, it's kind of a noirish monster movie, kind of interesting. Valley of the Zombies, the final film here, 1946 as well. Long dead madman Ormond Merckx once believed that endless blood transfusions would make him immortal. Now resurrected via voodoo, he stalks the city for human blood. A woman falls under Ormond's hypnotic vampiric spell. So these are all pretty short in their running times, I believe. So you can whip through these, which I kind of love about these Republic films. It doesn't mention anything about the scans, but I'm assuming they're decent. Audio commentary for The Lady and the Monster by artist and film historian Stephen R. Bissett. Audio commentary for The Phantom Speaks and The Valley of the Zombies by novelist and critic Tim Lucas. So he's involved in 2 of these. That's great. Very exciting. Makes this a must-have set. Audio commentaries for Catman of Paris and Valley of the Zombies by film historians David Del Valle and Miles Hunter. So you have 2 commentaries on Valley of the Zombies, which is cool. Sidebar on The Lady and the Monster, an on-camera interview, again with Tim Lucas and Stephen R. Bissett. So, very cool set. This is, I believe, a 2-disc set as well. So, four movies on 2 discs. So, that's a nice set from Kino. And then we have Revenge of the Ninja, which is, I think, one of the maybe the best ninja movie for my money. The one that stands out the most to me. Sho Kosugi stars, of course. The 80s was a time of ninjas. There's tons of ninja movies. There's, Enter the Ninja, Revenge of the Ninja, Ninja 3 The Domination, which is its own crazy, wonderful thing. But Revenge of the Ninja, I think, for straight ninja action and stuff is really good. And, I was obsessed, like a lot of kids were, with Storm Shadow from G.I. Joe and his conflict with Snake Eyes, and this makes me think of G.I. Joe for some reason. I remember I wrote a story about ninjas when I was in grade school, and I even tried to put like a freeze frame mystery ending on it, and my teacher like fixed it. Like she put like, there was like a question at the end, and she put like, I guess we'll never know, like ended my story because I couldn't end it. I guess I was thinking cinematically like a moron. Ninjas are back, brandishing swords, fists, and leaping and kicking, wielding blow darts and explosives. They know 1,000 ways to kill. Martial arts legend Sho Kosugi, Pray for Death, Rage of Honor, delivers a heart-pounding display of strength, speed, and lethal ninja know-how in this action-packed thriller that takes us back to the good old days of the Kung Fu extravaganza. When a band of ninja assassins slaughters the family of Cho Asaki, that's Kosugi, he flees to America in the hope of building a new life. A former ninja himself, Osaki tries to escape his deadly past, but soon discovers he has become the pawn of a ruthless drug trafficker and American ninja intent on killing anyone who crosses his path, including Osaki. Directed by action maestro Sam Furstenberg, who of course also did the Break-In movies and Avenging Force, and did he do the first Enter the Ninja? I can't remember if that was him or not, but did a lot of stuff for Canon. And produced by Canon legends Joran Globus and Menachem Golan, Revenge of the Ninja is terrific entertainment with slam-bang action scenes, mind-blowing stunts, and legendary villains like Professor Toru Tanaka. So this is a reissue, and they do not mention, and now it has a slipcase, which it did not have before. And it does not have alternate artwork. But they don't mention a new scan. But I think they may have added a commentary. I can't remember what was on the previous disc, but this now includes an audio commentary by director Sam Furstenberg and stunt coordinator Stephen Lambert, audio commentary by action film historians Mike Leader and Arnie Venema. I think that might be new. Intro by Sam Furstenberg, etc., etc. But 1983 R-rated ninja action. If you're into that sort of thing, this is quite satisfying. And lastly, a documentary that I had no knowledge of whatsoever called The French from 1982. And this one is presented by Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson Presents, which makes sense if you think about his fixation with Bjorn Borg and how, if you look at Bjorn Borg, especially in this, I don't know if he saw this before he did Royal Tenenbaums, because it came out in 82 or whatever, or he was just into tennis, because you also see the Rod Laver tennis shoes that he uses, that Max Fisher wears, and Rushmore. Just tennis obviously was a big deal to Wes Anderson, but Bjorn Borg features prominently in this, and he's who Richie Tenenbaum is modeled after. If you look, he's got the same look as Bjorn Borg. Okay, so William Klein, the legendary American photographer and filmmaker, has put together a body of work as thrillingly eclectic as any living artist. In his 1969 film Muhammad Ali, The Greatest, Klein found a subject that combined his interest in sport and social criticism, and much the same combination can be seen at work in a very different cultural context in The French. Klein was the first person to be granted full exclusive access to the tournament in its 90-year history, and using that doorway into locker rooms, TV studios, players' boxes, he shot the ultimate behind-the-scenes look at the 1981 French Open, crucial moment in a crucial year in the history of the game, and its iconic players, Bjorn Borg, John McEnroe, Chris Everett, Yannick Noah, and Yvonne Lendl, with Klein's customary eagle eye and whirlwind energy. The French captures the noisy bedlam that accompanies any major sporting event, while also revealing a level of candor from its subjects that is impossible to imagine in today's secretive, media-trained world. So this is like over 2 hours long. Very interesting. very fly on the wall approach. I mean, I can't help but be reminded of Frederick Wiseman. You know, it's not quite Wiseman in its way. It's not quite as witty as he is, but it does find some interesting moments, and the candor of behind the scenes is intriguing, you know, to watch. Jimmy Connors is in this too. I don't know why they didn't mention that. But yeah, it's really, Martina Navratilova as well. Yeah, it's just fascinating if you're into that sort of fly on the wall, behind the scenes documentary type stuff. Sadly, no extra features at all. I would love even just an interview with Wes Anderson would have been cool. Like, why did you present this, dude? I mean, I can guess, but like, anyway, a cool, you know, movie to find its way to Blu-ray, and lots of good stuff from Kino this week. So anyway, thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.